Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Raymond, where were you born?
When was I born? In Luton.
When was that? What year were you
A
born?
long time ago.
We've forgotten. Okay.
1932.
So 1932.
Mustn't look at the camera, must I?
That doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Looking at Sarah.
Doesn't matter what you do. What were your parents? What did they do?
My father was an artist. My mother was a seamstress.
Seamstress. Oh, that makes it more Victorian than 1932. I imagine
It was 19, not 18.
Yes,
despite appearances.
Sounds like sort of Dickens and Kenyon. I'm reading about Little Nell. She was a seamstress.
They met in a shop 2 minutes from my present flat in Leverhulme.
That's a swing, isn't it? So,
Important piece of trivia on the record.
Apthorpe
It
is...
wasn't trivia to them.
Apthorpe seems...
Or to me, since
what-
I
what-
resulted as a result of that trivia.
What kind of name is Apthorpe? Is it a...
It's a Welsh name, isn't it?
Oh, there's an argument about it, whether it's Welsh or not.
Ap is a
Yes.
Welsh.
Oh yes, and Thorpe is a sort of place
Yes.
or something.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes. So you were born in Luton and you stayed there, did you, for some time?
Just to be born, I wasn't very interested in staying in Luton. No. Sorry.
And then you went...
Had to be
Where did you go to school?
All somewhere. Oh, in various ways. Everywhere.
Everywhere. What sort of everywhere? I mean, mostly in the south of
Well,
England.
my father went from post to post in the same company.
I thought you said he was an artist. Oh,
Yes,
a commercial
yes,
artist.
Commercial artist.
I see.
And then he went into marketing,
Hmm.
wallpaper, wall and paints,
Hmm.
and travelled around. So I went to school wherever we happened to be,
Hmm.
which included London, Bristol, Brighton, Maidstone, Luton, more than one place in London, more than once in Bristol. I think that's all.
Did anyone in any of these schools, I mean, often one or two teachers grab hold of one's imagination, did anyone influence you strongly? Do you remember any
No.
particular teachers or...
No.
So,
There was one incident when I think I told my parents that I think I'd asked him why I hadn't brought home any homework. I said, well, I've done it, and it was all so easy. And they said, well, what are you doing at school? And I said, I was cleaning out the cupboards. Why are you cleaning out the cupboards? Well, I don't need to spend much time on lessons. And the school teacher said, you're wasting your time, just clean the cupboards. And that led to the only time my father actually intervened or took any interest in me or my life. And he turned up at the school and said, why was his son being asked to clean out the cupboards? That's all.
But so you found schoolwork very easy, on the whole.
Yes.
What were you,
At that time.
what were you particularly interested in? What subjects interested you? What did you specialise in? This must have been during the war. Art.
I think the only subject of interest to me really, substantively, was art.
Mm.
And why didn't I pursue it? Because I didn't agree with the art teachers that I was talented enough. They thought I was, and I thought I wasn't.
Yes.
So I thought I would like to be an architect, but that meant learning mathematics, and it meant planning a 7-year course. I was admitted to the School of Architecture at Liverpool, which was then famous for architecture, it still is. Then we realised it could be a 7-year thing, 7-year course of education, which now I couldn't afford, my parents couldn't afford. And then there was always this feeling that I had to do mathematics and engineering.
This must have been during the war, 1932, and your later part of your education was in the 40s.
Yes.
Did that influence, I mean, do you have recollections of that at all? Did you have to avoid
Absolutely
bombing?
no recollection of the subjects I was studying or was interested. No recollection whatsoever.
Really? What about the war? I mean, do you have any memories
Oh,
of that?
being bombed and being evacuated.
Where were you evacuated from? Into?
From London, first to Tiverton, and then later to Hertford, which is around the corner here.
Yes. With your whole family, or just you?
No, just me and a brother.
Who did you go and stay with? Where were you located? When you boarded with someone?
In boarded, in Tiverton with a family. Didn't really want to have anybody boarded on them, and we misbehaved in some way. I went into a room in the house that no one was going into. Then the second time, evacuated by myself, without a brother, to Tiverton, with a very warm, caring family.
To Hertford.
To Hertford.
And so, do you still keep in contact with him? Or not?
Only.
No.
I remember the name. The name was Dye, D-Y-E. Dye is of Hertford. The Dye is of Hertford.
They're probably still there, because it's an unusual name in the telephone directory.
Yes.
When you went on at school until what age?
18.
18. You did A-levels, or
Yes.
in
Equivalent of
what subjects?
art, economics, history, geography,
4.
Latin.
5 A-levels.
I think it was Latin. Latin at some point. I hadn't done Latin earlier, and I needed Latin to go for university entrance. And I think I did that with Miss Craven. I think therefore I pronounced Latin with the Scottish accent.
Good flighting.
Oh, that's enough. That's
You
enough.
decided you'd go to university at this point. You was always assumed you'd go to university.
No. No. I'm not quite sure how I decided to go. My parents opposed strongly and refused to sign whatever paper it was one had to sign.
They didn't want you to go.
And I complained to the headmaster of the school in Bristol. And later my father came to hear that I had complained, and I must have told him, because the headmaster sent a letter to him probably and said, really, the parent is expected to sign this. So he did. And then I went. There's something like that.
So it was your decision to do this?
Yes.
Which university did you go to?
Newcastle. It was then University of Durham. And then when I got there, I think I went to read geography, or was it geography and anthropology? When I got there, I found anthropology.
Was part of what you were reading?
Oh no. Yes, but I did a sort of double degree with it, examined only in geography. But I did an undergraduate degree in anthropology. Meinhardt and Sheddick.
What sort of were the
Poles apart.
main kind of themes of anthropology when you... This would be in the late...
Oh, Sheddick was interested in theatre, culture theatre. Didn't really... I don't recall him then talking about land tenure in pursuit of land. That was one of his areas. And Meinhardt was extremely friendly and hospitable. And I think his lectures were on must have been into the clustering monkey kingship. Kingship and kinship, I don't remember a word about it. Probably didn't understand the word about it. But he encouraged me and said he'd make a very good anthropologist. And so did Sheddick, and I got on with the two, and they didn't get on with each other. But they both thought I should go and do anthropology.
Did you find it exciting?
So I did.
I mean, you found it...
Yes, I found the theory exciting. I found kinship and kingship. Land tenure wasn't in thick on us. And I didn't find... it was interesting that the Meinhardt has a pet leopard. Well, had a pet leopard
great tradition.
while in the field. I was more interested in that, I think. Everything about kingship. Sorry, this is all the stuff of anthropology that I didn't really like.
But you bit sufficiently to feel that you'd like to go on to do a postgraduate degree in anthropology?
Yes.
At Oxford?
Yes.
And that was what year did you go to Oxford?
That's been 53.
I was there as a little boy at this preparatory school at the time. If I'd walked up the road there, you would have been as a superhuman and a superman right up in postgraduate
I wore lemon chamois gloves sometimes.
You did?
Sometimes. I found them many years later. Then remembered I used to wear them at that time. Can't think why.
Who was at Oxford when you went to see
teachers?
Redwood Brown and gone.
Redwood Brown was gone. EP was there.
Maya wasn't there.
No.
Maya had just gone too.
Yes.
John Beattie was there? No.
John Beattie was there, yes. Needham, I think, gave his first seminar in Nigeria, wasn't it? And I think joined the staff just started leaving. Very dreary on Redwood Brown.
And Daisy Bates.
And Daisy Bates, that hadn't made an appearance, at least in those lectures at that time. She came in later. Unless I'm mistaken. I don't recall Daisy Bates as prominent from that time. Then, of course, there was Paul Hanning. He was the light of the bunch.
Was he?
He was the person with ideas. And Dusty Hanning.
Laura Hanning.
Laura Hanning. She was known as Dusty.
Had she written...
And Jim was known as Paul, or Paul was known as Jim. Paul was known as Jim. It was Jim and Dusty.
And they were very lively.
Oh, they were lively. They had ideas. They read widely. And
did they get on with the other people?
Yes, they did get on. I think they were quite popular.
Were they American?
They were American.
Who was your
They were sophisticated. And she wore sort of leopard skin tights. And with kind of curl up on the floor, or uncurl on the floor. And you were right there for drinks. Nobody else could eat like that. It was Dusty.
Was she a very... I mean, she's written this marvellous book,
Return to Laughter.
Was she a very sensitive and
yes.
observant person?
Yes.
And who...
They both were. And I would probably think that the work they did jointly on the tea economy, is that right?
Yes.
Was probably superb in its day. Really.
Was Evans Pritchard already past to the intellectual?
Yes, long past.
It couldn't have been long past because in fact Neuro-Religion was only published about 55.
Oh yes, but I had a very poor opinion of all the newer work. Well, I didn't read it immediately. I don't know how I avoided reading it. I don't think I read the Neue properly till my probably second or even my third year. I thought it was more a work of fantasy than a work of anthropology. Oh dear, must I go into all this?
Yes. You thought he had made it all up?
Yes, I thought it was not very true. Oh dear, I ought to think through all this before recording it.
Well,
but that was...
that was your feeling, punctuated.
Yes.
You hadn't obviously been to Africa at this time.
Oh no, I thought it was entirely unnecessary to go to Africa. Fieldwork was entirely unnecessary.
Why was that?
Breakfast.
Why was it unnecessary?
Why was it unnecessary? For one, it was dangerous and
sat...
inconvenient and dirty.
Oh well, that's different.
That's one thing, but I wasn't into all that then.
No.
The other thing was, the few basic principles learned from Zimmerman or something, you could predict them. Sorry, this sounds ridiculous, but this is how I
What were the
thought
basic
at that time.
principles that you...
Oh, I can't remember them now, I could look them up.
And what sort of order of principle? Like?
Well, types of relationships, beyond which types of society, cultural, behaviour sort of all went together. If you knew one thing, you knew the other.
Pattern variables, in other words.
Sort of pattern variables.
Like Parsons, if you knew it was a mine shaft in a
That's right.
society, then you could predict all sorts of things like its legal and moral system.
Yes, yes.
But someone somewhere has got to go through their own personal experience of going out and finding whether you're right, presumably. Otherwise we all sit here.
Oh no, because
imagine
you were right.
society.
If they didn't find it, they were wrong. That was the absurd idea one had at the time.
So the world had to conform to your prediction.
Yes, that was what one thought. And demonstrated by the person one talked to, because you could tell him what he'd found out and he would agree.
Well, that's what he found. You never found anyone who said, no, you're wrong.
No. Probably no one took it seriously enough to say that. Probably not people thought that.
Well, who were the people who you were checking in your theoretical framework with? In other words, the people who came back with actual messy data. Your sort of co-PhD field workers at that time.
That's right, yes.
Who were they?
I can't remember them now.
Can't remember any of the people you were.
But I can, but yes.
I mean, at that time, at Oxford, there must have been who would be doing a PhD. John Campbell, was he one of the people?
Yes.
He was writing. You didn't mention Perry Stiano. Wasn't he a teacher?
Yes. My first tutor was Dumont. Then
Dumont was
he was there for a year. And then went back to Paris. And then John Perry inherited me.
Let's go back to Dumont. Dumont. What was Dumont working on at that time? What was he working on?
He used to talk about La Tarasque, but probably in ways that none of us really understood. He also used to lecture on primary colour. Who or what was primary colour? A subcaste and sous-caste.
Oh yes, he wrote a book on it. Sous-caste.
And sous-caste. That was what he was talking about.
So he was
And none of us could understand a word
he spoke in English
from his lectures. Yes, but there was also a problem of English. But despite that, I mean, that aside, there were problems in understanding his lectures. I don't think anybody understood anything from his lectures.
Really? Was he a bad lecturer as well?
I think so.
So a language, a theory, and a lecture.
Well, I think he'd emerged. He'd done his fieldwork probably recently, and probably hadn't worked it all out. And there was this business about the marriage, affinity. Was that? He was just starting on rethinking affinity and marriage.
That's right. Allowance and affinity.
Sorry,
It was the great time of the beginnings of the debates about affinity and kinship.
We didn't discuss hierarchy.
You didn't?
We didn't discuss hierarchy.
When did, as you know, only too well, he acknowledges.
Yes, that was a great surprise. Great pleasure in a way. Great surprise. I couldn't think what he meant.
Acknowledges your influence on his book, Homo Hierarchus. What, if you didn't discuss him, how did you influence him? You read your thesis?
Yes, he read the thesis. And probably at that time I was working on my sort of theory of relationships and which ones are opposed to others, or follow culturally consequence. But I don't recall ever discussing hierarchy of religion. I do recall discussing sacred and profane, and arguing that there wasn't enough of it. I remember saying something repeatedly, kept reminding me of the sentence. We didn't discuss hierarchy.
got it through your writing rather than through talking to you.
Yes, I must have written a chapter at that time in which that was discussed. And he did read what I wrote. And he thought that he thought that I was doing something which should be... So he upgraded me from the master's degree to the PhD degree. So don't bother with the master's degree, get this out. That was. But I really was very surprised when one of the English editions of Homo Erectus came out. He sent it to me and wrote, with great apologies, please see page so-and-so. Page so-and-so said he was very sorry he'd forgotten to acknowledge his source in the French edition.
That's right.
And I was quite I remember being
What
very
was the
surprised.
idea?
Quite totally surprised by that.
What was the idea that...
Really, it's
Can you remember the idea that he acknowledged? What was the central point? The idea of...
Oh, he claimed that this business of encompassing the hierarchy and increasing the next to the whole area which I did use to discuss with David Pocock before their divorce. I don't recall ever discussing this with Moody.
Did he claim that idea came from the
Yes.
work that you've done?
Yes. Yes, and I did do something on this, on that type of thing. And we could talk about this another time, but I went to great lengths actually to try to understand what I was doing, to the point of taking mescaline.
Really?
I
This is
took
all this
mescaline. Yes, I took mescaline 4 or 5 times. Initially, to try to understand what I was doing more clearly and find a solution. I was looking for a totally exclusive, exhaustive list of something, and I thought if there were any gaps, I could find that out under mescaline. What one did find out under mescaline was that what we were thinking became very sharp, but you couldn't think anything new under mescaline. And of course these wonderful visible things, we're looking around here, these parallel, these vertical lines of books, colours, and that's where there's twisted over. You would hear that, you would hear these lines, and you would hear something where it's been twisted. That was the classical stuff, that is what we were expected to have, to enjoy under mescaline, and one did enjoy that. And one did in that sense expand consciousness, one didn't expand thought, particularly logical thought, if you were looking for the logical thing. I did think then that one could pose questions more clearly, but there's no way of finding a solution as a result of putting oneself into a state of body and mind.
See, I mean, to me it seems a strange thing to do. Were there other people doing this at that time that you knew of? Or
Yes.
Huxley is a famous example, but anyone else?
Yes.
In Oxford?
Oh no, but I knew one or two people socially who were taking it for the trip. And then I decided to take it. See what I could discover.
Your alternative to field work, I can see. Instead of all that messy, unpleasant data gathering, would be on a drug-induced trip instead.
Alan Macfarlane, one person. I think he was the person who introduced it to me. He was a student of anthropology and art.
Yes.
Where is he now?
Help him on.
He went into designing exhibitions for museums. At one stage in his life, designed window displays for big departmental stores in New York, I think. Perhaps in London. Perhaps he started in London.
What was Dumont like?
What
What was Dumont like as a person?
as a person?
Supervisor, you got to know him. Was he friendly and
Yes, very friendly.
encouraging?
Very, very encouraging. Gave us some self-confidence. read you very carefully, engaged in discussing with you on your thesis. I mean, unlike Perestiani, who was very charming, very friendly, also gave one self-confidence, and could play tennis. But I think you didn't often find enough time to read your chapters, and therefore it wasn't necessary to meet very often for tutorials. He was very appreciative, and of course very intelligent himself. Yes, and he was the only anthropologist who was teaching his own culture. I mean, as a Mediterranean, he was teaching Mediterranean studies, or eventually turned to teaching Mediterranean studies.
By this time he was doing that, he was changed from his North African.
As I was leaving, yes.
What was he working on when he was writing about his...
Cypriot village he visited over the years.
And at this time...
We'll wrap all this up, won't we?
Yeah, of course.
We can do it again when it's more relaxed.
Yes. We said we can, but it's worth just practicing.
Yes, just practicing.
When Perestiani was supervising you, was he beginning, at that time, they were beginning to bring anthropology home and Mediterranean studies were just starting in Canada and Perestiani? So, were you in any way involved in that, in discussing it with
Everyone had to say no comment. Yes, of course.
Tell us about honour among the Arabs. What was the connection between honour among the Arabs and the work that was being done in the Arab Mediterranean? Was this was a book that you found in Bodleian?
Yes. Farriers. Honour among Arabs. I found it in an uncut. It was uncut when I found it.
Yes. What was its sort of name?
Well, it gave me the sort of ethnography that I was looking for, that illustrated what I knew already, namely that there was a kind of logical connection between competition, competitive relationships, and honour.
What about shame?
Doesn't that sound profound?
What about shame? That's coming to it.
Yes, honour and shame. But that was on that dimension. That was quite different from honesty and sin and guilt, which was to hierarchy, and that was what I was concerned with. Shame was to competition, whereas guilt was to hierarchy. And that was the sort of area one was working out. And then one looked for some ethnography. I did have a very, ethnography was a very, I did have a very simplistic view about ethnography, which was grist to one's mill. The mill was what was important. One needed grist because people needed proof. Proof was available in the ethnography.
So you raided it.
And I raided it. And, introduced that notion, which then was taken further by the Mediterraneanists.
So that
in fact, I wanted, as a result of that, I wanted to go to Portugal. First glimmer that I had that perhaps fieldwork should be done for its own sake was after I finished my thesis. I went to Corsica on a fellowship. But then I thought, to finish the thesis, I would then go do fieldwork in Portugal. And was encouraged by EP, with whom I did not have any personal relationship whatsoever. Personal or professional relationship. Although I was his research assistant for 6 months. My duties consisted of dusting the books in the library. That was what research assistants did in anything at all.
Really, were just paying you?
Yes, while waiting for the results of the thesis examination. So I applied, I can't remember what foundation, possibly Matthew's foundation, to go to Portugal. And was told that, I think it was EP who said, sorry to hear them didn't get it, because they think going to Portugal is going on holiday, and they're not in the business of financing holidays. I think it was EP that put it like that. Could have been, couldn't it?
Could well.
Relative.
So you might have done a few work in Portugal and become a Mediterraneanist.
Yes.
As it was, the Honour and Shame School of Anthropology, which was very influential, was partly related to work that you did.
Yes, I gave the first seminar. I think I did. I gave the first seminar in that series and kind of predicted these relationships. Everyone else kindly demonstrated their importance after their hard work in the field.
Book after book.
I meant to rub this out, won't you? I don't have that view of fieldwork in ethnography anymore.
No.
Certainly. There was somebody called Leach who later talked about butterflies.
Butterfly collecting.
Yes.
Yes. And you had that view of things,
Yes.
collecting butterflies.
Except I thought they were dragonflies or ants. Nothing is interested in butterflies.
Well, he was talking about taxonomies and classifying things and putting things into boxes. Rather.
Yes.
What about John Campbell's work on honour, family and patronage? Was one of his students.
Yes.
And you discussed his work with him as well.
Oh yes, I read every paragraph in his drafts.
And made some suggestions how it might be improved.
I suppose so. He was an ethnographer then, looking for theory, and people did then distinguish between theory people and ethnography people. I was supposed to be a theory person.
You were a theory person looking for some ethnography.
But necessarily being obliged from time to time to look for some ethnography. And John had lots and lots and lots of ethnography. And it was very nice talking to him.
What sort of man is he? He worked in the civil service or diplomatic service or something as well at some point. Or did he go into that afterwards? Something in the...
I don't think so. He may have gone into anthropology afterwards. He was ill. TB. He was in the sanatorium somewhere for some time, where he met his wife, who I think was also ill in TB in the sanatorium.
She was South African, was she?
Yes.
Returning to your thesis, what was the title of your thesis?
Social change, formal and empirical study. Notice the theory and the fact dichotomy of those days.
Yes. And what was the synopsis of the thesis and what was the central?
I tried to invent a kind of comparative method for studying social change. The ethnography, one was obliged to find somewhere. I found in these Yucatan studies, the Redfield. I remember actually doing the ethnographic part, maybe an exaggeration. I don't think it took me more than 4 or 5 days to write however many chapters there were on the ethnography at the end. Probably the most dreadful part of the thesis altogether. But that, I really don't think it took me, I think it took less than a week to do the whole ethnography bit.
The empirical, so the formal analysis was this was a...
Formal analysis took a couple of years. I was threshing about, couldn't find my way. And I had to cope with the patterned areas and understand the patterned areas and see what general systems did. And to see what system had been missed out. And of course the spatial system was totally missed out in general theory. So I tried to put it in. EP said that I was out-passing parsons.
Who were your examiners? Was EP one of your examiners?
No.
Who was the internal examiner?
The first examiner, it was examined twice.
Yes.
the first examiners were Leach.
Edmund Leach. Was the external.
Who was that?
Leonhardt?
I think the internal was Curtis Downey. I think in those days our supervisor was required to be the internal to check that out.
It was a long examination, or a short examination. The actual viva.
I think it was quite long. I mean, well, a couple of hours. And I was attacked from the moment he opened his mouth. It was by Leach. He had made an enormous number of notes. I think he typed out an enormous number of notes. And half understood what I was trying to say, half hadn't. I don't blame him in one way, because I wrote, no doubt, extremely badly. I saw the thesis the other day. This was terribly written, terribly presented, even with typing mistakes. I can't remember quite how he put it, but he obviously didn't like it whatsoever. But he put in a report which was as bad as, which was considered by the University of Oxford as bad as he considered the thesis. Even perhaps very similar, incomprehensible, confused. So the University of Oxford rejected his report. Not my thesis, fortunately. And at the university's expense, other examiners were found later on. And it went through. I was congratulated, and that was that.
Were you revived?
Yes, I was revived. I think by an Irish sociologist, the only sociologist as such then at Oxford, who was at Barnet House. So
not Halsey.
Remember, not Halsey.
Anyway, an Irish sociologist at Barnet House.
Well, was he in the first group or the second group? And Gluckman.
Next Gluckman.
Gluckman was brought into Manchester. That viva took 5 minutes.
Really?
And I was congratulated very warmly by Gluckman, who presumably was scoring off Leach. To my advantage rather than my expense. And I was sent off. He didn't have time and rushed off for a... I think normally we're invited to have drinks. Yes. He had to catch a train, or the EP wanted him to leave immediately. Probably that. That's actually... so I never actually saw Gluckman. At the same time, I saw him at the Viva for 5 minutes. Never had a word outside the Viva. Never saw him before or after.
That's strange. Yeah. Did they suggest...
Yet I've written and thought a great deal about Manchester School.
Did either of them suggest that part of it should be published? Or?
I think Gluckman did, yes.
This comparative method and approaches to trying to set up comparative methods in anthropology, all this tape will not be...
Yes, we'll do it more. We'll do it again.
But I know that you feel that some of the ideas in your thesis must have, just as I explained, things contaminating my blood from Hampton's Abbey and capitalism onwards. There are things in your thesis which re-emerged rather surprisingly elsewhere.
Yes. Rethink again for positive.
Edmund Leach's
paper by Leach. And what was wrong with the paper was that it reflects his half understanding of what he'd read in his thesis.
So it's really like his examiner's report.
And possibly, I'd love to see his own examiner's report. I want to see his notes. I want to see his report. It's just history that I'd like to know. After all, it's quite important to me at the time. It ruined my life at the time. So,
that was in 1963.
But he may have, yes, it was in the 50s.
His lecture was in 1963.
Yes, this thesis was in 56. 1956. It may have been, he said something in his report to the London Council, University of Oxford. He may have said that there was something in it.
But that it needed rewriting, retyping, etc., etc.
Could have said that. It was really very, very badly written, presented, very unfinished, unpolished. Looks like a piece of waste paper, really, the thesis itself. It reads like that as well. It does.
But what was
it does.
That lecture of Leach's, which was the first Malinowski Memorial Lecture, if you remember, Rethinking Anthropology.
Oh, I've forgotten that.
And published in...
You've done a Malinowski lecture. I've never been out to a Malinowski lecture.
Well, anyway, mine was about the 26th, and his was the first, and it was
it wasn't the 26th, it was a very early one. And I came across it when I was looking through to see which man, which issues of man I could bring to you.
Well, Leach's article was one of the kind of stars in his crown, and along with some of the ideas in political systems of having Burma and so on. What was it that you think that he garbled in
Categories.
Categories. In what way? Can you explain that?
Categorical logic. He hadn't seen that. It's all such a long time ago. Cottoned on to categories, categorical distinctions and categorical logic. I'm not saying he got the initial idea from the thesis, but my thesis was on that topic. I have to recall it, or I can't remember it.
Yes,
he was half-baked, like most of Leach's important papers.
It was
half-baked. So there was an idea there, but it was a half-baked idea.
And do you think if he hadn't read
Because
your
my
work,
thesis was quarter-baked, but I'm not
without your
mine was
work,
anything more than that. It was a very badly done thesis.
without your work, do you think you would have come to a sort of conclusion?
Difficult to say.
Did you come across him again? Leach?
No. Never met him. Oh, he wrote to me once about raising funds to bring a Chinese anthropologist out. I think he didn't know I had lived in Taiwan and learned some Chinese and written. And he gave me a few helpful hints on how to deal with Chinese, which was pathetically... And also I was annoyed by it as well.
So after you've dusted down these books in the library for 6 months, had your reviver, what did you do then? What was the next?
I went off to Lusaka, to the secretary of the Livingstone Institute.